sugar is a platform. And by a platform, I mean that it provides to each of these activities a certain set of additional attributions. So for example, and this is very important, sugar has this concept called the diary, or the journal. And everything I do in sugar, whatever I do in sugar, automatically gets saved into my diary. I never hit save. There is no save button, because everything should just always save. Why do you ever have to hit save on a computer? That's old thinking. It's old school. But nonetheless, so we got rid of a lot of that junk. There's no double clicking. Double clicking is actually a conspiracy. Double clicking, it's a conspiracy to prevent the elderly people from using the computer. But so what we do is we organize things not as a hierarchical file system, but by time. And it's just, this is the things I did. So this is, you know, I've been busy lately, doing lots of different things. The reason we have the diary is both as a way to sort of save your work, but it also, I think this is a table for talking about assessment. We use the diary for assessment because it's a portfolio. It's a portfolio of the child's work. So whatever they do is saved, and then they make presentations. What did I do, and why did I do it? Every diary entry, when I have my diary, I also have a place to write. A place to write about what I was doing, why I was doing what I did, what worked, what didn't work. So we have the children write all the time. No matter what they do, they write. So if they're in gym class, they write. If they're, you know, whatever they're doing, they write. They write, they write, they write. It's the idea of a lab notebook that comes from science is applicable to everything. And so we really emphasize doing things, writing about what you did, and then you use that as part of your reflective process, as part of your assessment process. When I was young, I trained my parents, very early, I trained my parents to stop asking the question. The question was, what did you do at school today, Walter? And I trained them very quickly by saying nothing. And then they stopped asking the question. With sugar, that relationship changes because the parents open up the journal, the diary, and they say, well, what was this about? So it changes the whole dynamic between the teacher and the child and the parents. The whole relationship changes just because we have the portfolio, just because we have the diary. So the diary is part of the platform that each application is automatically part of because of sugar. So there are these pedagogical affordances. We don't force the children to do these things. We don't force the teachers to do these things. But by providing this infrastructure, we increase the odds that these good things will happen. Because we know that writing about your work, reflecting on your work is good. It's important. So if we can make it easier for that to be the default, then we're accomplishing something. So sugar's all about that kind of thinking. It's not about saying do it my way instead of do it your way. It's about, we know these are powerful pedagogical tools. Let's make it easy for that to be the default. So that's, you know, in a nutshell. Hey, let's do some programming, because that's what I love. You're going to have to bear with me. So actually, a lot of you probably, again, a lot of you have used Scratch. So yesterday we were visiting a school and the children were using Scratch. And they showed me the things they were doing in Scratch. And it was so clear to me that they really didn't understand what they were doing. It was like they were sort of fumbling around doing these things and getting these effects, but they didn't understand how it all worked. So we visited 2 schools yesterday. So on the way from the first school to the second school, I wrote Scratch inside of TurtleArt. So I'll show you how Scratch actually really works. Let me hide the bricks and you can see. So this is Scratch. And I have my little Scratch, my little cat is walking across the background that I loaded. And this is basically what all the kids were doing. But they didn't know, how does this work? Why does this work? And so, in TurtleArt, they actually It's a simple programming environment like Scratch with the little blocks, but it's a little bit more low level. It shows them how things work. So they don't just make these things, but they also are exposed to the actual mathematics of how to move things around. And I can do this work even with first and second graders. First and second graders can learn about Cartesian space. They can move the turtle around in a coordinated fashion. They can manipulate multimedia directly with the turtle. So they're really understanding in a much deeper sense how computation works and what they can actually do with computation. So let's we're going to play with another program, because I mentioned several times sensors. And let's just start a fresh turtle art window. And we have in turtle art these sensors. So I can take, for example, the value from the microphone, the level of the voice in the microphone. And if I click on this right now, I get different numbers depending on how loud it is. So we're going to build a burglar alarm. We want a burglar alarm so that if somebody breaks a window in my house, somebody breaks into my house to make a loud noise, I'm going to take a picture of them. Okay, so let's write a burglar alarm. So what we want to do is our burglar alarm is always on. So forever we just have our burglar alarm enabled. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to listen. We want our burglar alarm to listen to see if it hears a loud noise. So if the volume is greater than some number, and we don't know what that number is yet, but we'll figure that number out in a second. If that volume is greater than some big number, then what we want to do is we want to show a picture from the camera. We just wrote a burglar alarm. So now what the kids do is then they experiment with the parameters and get it tuned to fit their environment. But this is a burglar alarm. Let's make this be, say, let's make it be, say, 300 or something. And let's just see what happens. There we go. So, again, the kids can do this. They can, and they'll debug, and it won't work, and this kid will help that kid, and it all just, it happens that they really engage in sophisticated concepts that are going to help them deal with whatever problems they encounter. And we can do lots of other stuff. Here's I'll show you the Valentine I wrote for my wife.
Let me tell a story. Yesterday was so funny because he was teaching the kids en el colegio de Moscala. Entonces I was, Walter, please go slowly, step by step. And he was, no, let them explore, let them do it. They will get to it. Y yo estaba con la vieja visión de vamos paso a paso, el profesor.
So, there's this misunderstanding. We think about, the world is this very complicated place, and how do we deal with the complexity of the world? And so the misunderstanding is that what we try to do is we try to remove the complexity, make things simpler so that we can understand them and reach them. And I think that that's a mistake. And the reason why I think that's a mistake is that the richness of life comes from the complexity. When you go to get a glass of wine in Chile, you don't go to the bartender and say, I want a nice simple wine. No, you want a wine that has complexity, because that's that's where the pleasure comes from. So if our goal is to let people enjoy life and get pleasure from life, it's not to reduce complexity. But the reason I can say this is that what we can do is we can reach complexity through learning. Each of us is inherently, by being human, we're learners. By being human, we're expressive. By being human, we're social. So we can take advantage of those three attributes of being human to reach to complexity and enjoy life and live our lives. So if the goal is not make things simple for the children, the goal is to let the children learn how to engage with the complex world. And so, we don't want to make it impossible for them. We want to give them some steps, some scaffolding to get to the complexity. But anything that has an artificially low ceiling, I don't like. I want the children to be able to climb any mountain they want. In the music inside of Sugar, we have many music tools. I'll show you. We have a very, very simple tool called Tam Tam. Somewhere. Here we go. And what Tam Tam is I just choose an instrument and I pound on the keyboard and it makes music. So I've chosen, let's choose. It's so simple that a 2-year-old child can use this with no instruction. And if you're, I have a friend in São Paulo who can make beautiful music with this. Okay, but it's got a very low ceiling. It's one voice. It's not real music yet. So what we do with Sugar is we have a progression. We go from Tam Tam to Tam Tam Jam. This lets you have multiple voices. It lets you synchronize over the network with that sharing I described to make a community orchestra. Multiple voices. It gets more complex. And some kids are going to go even further. Some kids are going to write music. So we have a music editing system where they can sequence and create their own compositions. So they can move the notes around. And then some kids are going to want to go even further because with Sugar, we gave them about 100 musical instruments just out of the box. But some kids are going to want to make their own instrument. So we give them a laboratory that's a synthesizer laboratory where they can play with all the tools that actually define sound and music so they can build their own instruments. Some kids are going to go even further than this. Now with Sugar, we always keep just one mouse click away in Sugar the source code of every program you're running. So this is the source code of the program we were just running, the synthesizer program. And so some kids are going to want to actually understand how these things work under the hood. And under the hood, inside of Tam Tam, is a technology called C-Sound. So the kids have access to this technology called C-Sound. Well, what is C-Sound? C-Sound is the tool that professionals use for doing music. So for example, in Hollywood, when they do special effects, audio effects for the movies, they use the programming language C-Sound. So in Sugar, we give the kids a tool that a 2-year-old can use, but a path to the same tools that professionals use. It's all there. It's all within the same context. Low floor, no ceiling. So we don't make assumptions about how high these kids can climb. We assume that every child's going to find his mountain and climb that mountain. And so that's really, yeah.
Do you see this kind of learning or as a complement of traditional way of using computers and education with educational software? Because you cannot get rid of that. You know, this is established. You know, and you have to deal with ministries and
well,
so you see that these two views that can play together.
Sugar. When I was a child, we had educational technology. Even though I'm older than everyone in the room except perhaps Rodrigo, but even back when I was a child, we had educational technology. Our educational technology was called the mimeograph machine.
Yep.
And it used to be a privilege to be the child who got to operate the mimeograph machine because you got to smell that ink. That ink was just such a wonderful smell. We were all getting high, we didn't actually know what it was. And what was the mimeograph machine, what was it used for? It was used for cranking out worksheets. The equivalent of educational technology, but it was ink on paper instead of pixels on the screen. But we were cranking out worksheets. We weren't learning anything, but that was the established way of doing things. You can take the computer and you can take Sugar and use it to make worksheets. It does a wonderful job of making worksheets. I don't do that because I know that other people are going to do that anyway. I don't encourage it because I think it's a waste of time, but nonetheless, I let it happen. I don't prevent it from happening. So sugar, you can use sugar for traditional educational software and traditional approaches, but what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to increase the odds, the opportunity that the good things are also going to happen. So I don't want to get in an argument about, this approach versus that approach. I'm just saying we can take whatever pedagogy you're working with, whatever gods you worship, whether it's whether you worship Paulo Freire or Maria Montessori or George